Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF Hayemi Bava Kamma DAF Nun Ches. We are holding on Nun Zayin Amud Beis, 9 lines off the bottom of the Amud. So in the Mishnah we learned that typically Shein V'Regel, right? If an animal eats or tramples upon something, the liability, the chiyuv, only applies when it occurred in the chotzer hanizik, in the victim's territory. But if it took place in the street, which is a rabbin, where the animal has full right to walk, naturally an animal would just eat whatever it encounters in the street. So the Torah does not hold the owner liable for that. However, let's say we have an animal walking along the street and it slips into a nearby garden, a vegetable garden, and consumes the vegetables there. So the Mishnah made that distinction between where it actually, deliberately went down, it climbed down into the gina, in which case it qualifies as chatzer hanizak. You went into that person's territory, you pay full damage, mishalei mashehi zika, whatever you damaged. But if it sort of slid in off the street, which is an oinus, it's an accident, you have a right to walk the street. And it so happens to be the level was unlevel, so basically you slid into the lower level, into the gina. In that case, the Mishnah says you don't actually pay damages, but you do pay something. You compensate the owner. It's called mashenenis. Whatever you gained, whatever you benefited, you saved a meal, your animal saved a meal, so that expense you had saved, right? So you benefited off the other person's loss. We had that sugya in the beginning of Bava Kamma, zenen v'zechaser, you benefited off that person's loss, so you pay that much. Whatever you gained, had you have fed your animal, animal feed. So you don't actually pay damages in terms of the actual item consumed, but you pay whatever you expense you spared yourself. Fine. Nafla l'gina v'nenis mishalemis mashenenis. Amar Rav b'nechvata. This only applies if the animal sort of crashed into the produce. Then you give the hana. The animal was cushioned. The animal's fall, right? The animal's drop was cushioned, was protected by that soft, produce, and that's what harmed the produce. So that's what you give. That's what you gained. That's the hana, and that's what you pay the owner. Okay, says the Gemara. It sounds like Rav is saying, but let's say the animal actually ate the stuff there. You don't pay anything, even the benefit you had from that, right? Why? How would that make sense? Why would you be patur to pay anything? Says the Gemara, okay, because perhaps Rav is in line with his opinion discussed elsewhere. We had this a couple of weeks ago. Rav says like this: when an animal eats, we can always say, the animal did not have to eat. Who forced the animal to eat? So that's why I don't have to pay. My animal ate. It's your issue, not mine. Well, says the Gemara, 1 second. Amri. So the response to this was, Hachi hashta. How do you compare the two things? Amor de Amar Rav Hasam. You know where Rav applies this reasoning? That's only heichadi taskahi. So you brought your produce, your bananas, into the other person's yard, and his animal ate up your bananas, got sick and died, right? Because he overate. It wasn't healthy for him. So there Rav says like this: what business did your animal have overeating my bananas? He brought that illness upon himself, so to speak. So you say, right? That's only hechadi taskahi. Right, when the other animal was harmed by overeating my stuff. So the owner of the pears can tell the owner of the animal, I'm not paying a red cent. I'm not paying for that. Who asked your animal to abuse his body and overeat and get sick? But in this case, it's the other way around. My animal ate your bananas and was mazik you. That's not a reason to absolve me. It's an excuse. My animal shouldn't have eaten. You should have washed your animal. It's your problem. Azuki hilachrini. The patir l'shlumimi amar, in a case where my animal is mazik somebody else, to apply this rationale to exempt me. Since when does Rav, support that? So this cannot be pshat in Rav. Rav cannot be saying that if the animal just crashed into the stuff, I pay mashenenes. But if it ate it, I'm potter. Why would I be potter? Allah says the Gemara, let me Bava Kamma. The other way around. Just the opposite. It goes without saying. Of course, if it had a nice meal, you pay your benefit. You pay what you gained. But let's say it didn't have a meal. It just slipped into the garden and the bananas or the tomatoes cushioned the animal's fall and protected it. So perhaps there's reason to make me potter. You know why? Ema. Maybe we can apply the famous formula, the phrase called ma'avriach ari menichse chaverohu. Imagine somebody sees a lion coming to attack his neighbor's property, and he chases away the lion. Does he get paid? No. He did a mitzvah, very nice, and cost him any money, right? So chasing away a predator, an attacker, beautiful thing. It doesn't earn you pay. So perhaps over here, where your tomatoes pretty much protected my animals, so my animal crashed into your tomatoes, that's called mavriya chari. Your property, your produce pretty much protected me. Thank you so much. So maybe you don't pay for that. Mavriya chari nichse chaveru u'mashenenis nami lo mishalom, and I don't owe you anything. Even the smaller, amount, the hana part, even that I don't give you. It's a mitzvah, Rashi says. You don't get paid for a mitzvah, not in this world, right? So, Kamash Mon Chiddush says no. It says, Rav, you should know, when the Mishnah says, you pay mashenenis, it goes without saying that if the animal ate, you pay. But even if there was no eating involved, your tomatoes simply protected my animal, there as well I pay. Why, says the Gemara? But you had a good, analogy. It's like, Mavriachari, minichsi chaveri, ve'machinami. What's wrong with that, connection? Says the Gemara, there's a difference. Two differences, actually. Because Mavriachari, minichsi chaveri, in that case, we die to you. I'm doing it willingly. I'm offering my services. Hi, love me, daite. But here, your animal crashed into my tomatoes. You didn't ask me permission. You have no right to impose this mitzvah on me. So you owe me losses. Inami, another difference can be, in that case, I have no loss. I chased away your animal. I didn't actually lose anything. Here, I lost my tomatoes. So I deserve pay. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah. The animal slipped into the garden, harmed the produce, so we pay, mashenenis. How did the animal slip in? Rav Kahana Amar, it slipped on its own wastewater. Rava Amar shadachvasa chaverta. This fellow was leading his herd, and one animal pushed the other, shoved the animal down the hill. Man the Amar shadachvasa chaverta. Now, according to the second shita, that he was shoved by the other animal, koshka shechelka b'meimim ragleh. So, if in this case you pay the, at least the hana, certainly when it was shoved by his fellow colleague, of course you pay the hana. But according to the other shita, that the case here is where he slipped on his own wastewater. That's when you pay the mashenenis. But we can make a diuk that but in the other case, this shita would hold that in the other case where one animal pushed the other one down the hill, it's an outright pshia, it's negligence, because the owner should have been careful. There, you don't get away with the lesser formula, mashenenis. You have to pay actual damages. The amalei, because the garden owner can tell the animal owner, you should have been more careful when you brought your animals through this, steep area. You should have brought them one at a time, single file, and not have them sort of side by side competing with each other and risk one of them ending off on the bottom of the hill. Amar Rav Kahana, Lo yishanu ala ba'isa aruga. When do we say that you can just pay the hanoah, the benefit, which is a smaller payment? That's only in terms of what the animal ate in that aruga, in that patch, in which it landed when it slipped. But aval maruga laruga, but if he went from one patch and visited the next patch as well, so he sort of slid into patch 1, and then he walked over to patch 2, in that case, mishalem es ma'ashizika, you can't just pay the hanoah amount, you have to actually pay hezek, actual damages. And the reason being, because as Rashi explains, the oines factor only applies to that first thrust. He slipped into this patch, okay, he's there, what do you want from an animal? Of course he's going to eat. Right? Rashi says, "Kiven the chazi letvo tuta loy mukma nafsha." An animal sees food, it's going to eat. That's part of the same accidents, part of the same oinus. Out of my hand, out of my control. But to go from one patch to the other, you should have restrained him. Should have been there to stop. So that's not an oinus. That's a regular mazik. That's shein b'rishus hanizik. You pay nizik shalom. So that's Hushita, Rav Kahana. Continues the Gemara. We have a machlekes. Yechon Amar. No, afilu maruga laruga, afilu kol yem kuloi. Whether it's in this patch, in the other patch, whatever you ate throughout the entire day, all falls under the same umbrella. You're only chayiv mashenenis and no more. Ad, until there is an end point. Until it actually leaves the area and comes back with the owner's, awareness, with his knowledge. So that meaning, he knew that he left. He knew that he's dangerous. He should have held back his animal. So until that point, whatever he ate in the garden after his first fall, you only pay hanoah. But once he leaves the garden, comes back, then it's full responsibility. Amra papa leitema acha teitze ladas v'tachshel ladas. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need both factors, both conditions, that he left the garden and the owner knew that he left. And number 2, he didn't lock up properly and he went back into the garden. No, you don't need both to be there in order to hold the owner fully responsible. Elo, rather, kivash yatzel adas. As soon as the owner knew that the animal left the garden, even if the animal was properly locked up, shmira pechusa, the basic shmira, and the animal broke out and went back to the garden, you're still chayiv, and chayiv full nezek. You know why? Because the animal is prone to going back to the exciting patch there, to the exciting garden, to get his food again. My timing, because the vegetable owner can tell the animal owner, look, you know animal's good and well. The Amalei tells him, kivan the yalfa. Once it learned, about the luscious food in my garden, once it discovered that treasure trove of food, whenever it can get away, it'll run right back. So you should have been doubly careful, extra cautious to protect my garden. Okay, so let's just summarize this piece of Gemara. Animal's walking along the street and slides into a gina, consumes some vegetables. Mishnah says, you're not fully responsible, you don't have to pay the entire hezek, just hanoah, what you saved, in terms of animal feed. And we had one chiddush that even if he was nechbeta, right, if he was protected from his fall by these vegetables, you still have to pay. We had a shaila, under what circumstance did the animal slip in? Then we had a chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda that even if we say that you only pay mashenenes, even if it's me'aruga la'aruga from one patch to the other, because he's still roaming around the same. But what's he left? You should be doubly careful, and a basic shmira does not suffice because he's prone to return. Continues the Mishnah. Okay, this is all if he slipped in. What if he actually, deliberately climbed down? That's called shein b'chatzar hanizak. You pay nezak shalom. Yarda kedarka v'yizika m'shalom es mashizika. You pay full damages. But Rabbi Yirmiyah. Okay, yarda kedarka. Let's say the animal climbed down. Fine. But the actual damage occurred as follows. The animal was about to give birth, and it gave birth right there, and there's this, birth liquid, whatever, that caused damage to the person's garden. So it wasn't through consumption, but through melee the mal. What's the halacha here? So in effect, you have a pshia element, because he should have restrained his animal from going down there to begin with, but ultimately it was an accident. So that's called chilasa b'pshia. It started with a pshia, but ultimately it concluded in an oinus, in an accident. So what's the halacha? According to the shita, which says that in this case you pay when you have a chilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'oinus you're chayiv. Okay, there's no question l'tiboylach, no question here you're chayiv as well. The question, however, would apply according to the other opinion. According to the other shita, the Amar says chilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'oinus pater. When you start with negligence and conclude with accident, you're pater. May. How do we treat this case? Shall we say, on the one hand we can say, right? It conforms perfectly. It started with a pshia, but it ended with an oinus, you're pater. Or, you know what? There is no oinus element at all. You're totally negligent. You should have expected this to happen. The given the kachazi, the krivel, you saw the animal was about to give birth, you should have protected the area. You should have looked out. You should have watched over the animal. It's another expression of watching and guarding and restricting and restraining. You should have been careful. Teiku. So that's the question which we leave unresolved. Okay. Now, in a case where you do pay actual damages, how do we pay? Actually what he ate? 10 bananas, $10? Or do we look at it more like in a wholesale, manner? So Mishnah tells us the latter. You don't pay actual, literal, retail value. And the Mishnah says you sort of evaluate the value of the field in totality, and you say, well, a field minus 10 bananas, okay, deduct a few pennies. You don't actually lose that much in the broader picture. How do we know this is true? Why don't we just, obligate him to pay actual damages? Banana for banana. Banana mean Amar of Masna, we have a prosek, the Amakro ubir b'stei acher. So you consumed in the other person's field. We discuss fields, not actual bananas. Malamed, we learn sheshamen al gav sada acher. We evaluate, we estimate based on the totality of the field. How much did it go down in value due to this, meal that the animal had? Says the Gemara, "Hay ubir b'stei acher." Well, this pasuk is needed for something else. When boilei, the famous halacha, the basic halacha, la forgive shisavim, that the shein is only chayiv in rishus hayachid, in rishus hanizak, not in the street. Ubir b'stei acher, in the other person's field, so it's needed for that, and unavailable for this halacha of wholesale analysis. Im Kain, says the Gemara, because if we're only coming to teach us that shein is chayiv b'chatzar nizak, it wouldn't say it this way. Lichtav rachman obir b'stei chaveira, it would say stei chaveira. Inami, it would say stei acher. Why does it say b'stei acher? By b'stei acher, in the field, in the broader picture. That's teaching us something regarding estimation, evaluation of damages. My b'stei acher is teaching us sheshamen al gav sadei acher, that we make this appraisal based on the bigger picture. Says the Gemara, okay, you have me convinced. Okay, maybe it's just coming to teach you this, right? So a banana isn't just banana; it's a banana in context of the entire picture. Well, afuki, which is Rab Minolas, and how do we know the other basic halacha? They don't pay in the street. It came because if it was only coming to tell you and present you the appraisal formula, the pasuk would say this phrase, this halacha, where the pasuk discusses payments, because it's a payment-related fact, right? I would say, "Meitav sadeyu, meitav karmi yishal b'stei acher." When you pay, in terms of the broader evaluation, the broader context. Lamali the kas v'rachmana gabi yubir. Why did the pasuk say these words b'stei acher way back in the beginning when we described the actual damage? Bir b'stei acher, you consume b'stei acher. Oh, Apparently, we're coming to teach you where it happened. So basically, you can learn both halachas. Number one, that this liability for a shein to begin with only applies bistei achar, in your friend's territory. Number two, when it comes to appraising the damage, it's all about the broader picture. How much would the field have gone down in value based on this damage. Okay, heiche shaminan. So we speak so much about, looking at the bigger picture. How exactly do we go about doing this? Amar Rabbi Yehuda like this. Sa'ah b'shishim sin. So Rashi explains like this. Although the Mishnah did mention something about a base sa'ah, but it's more complex than that. The Mishnah meant like this. You don't just look at one base sa'ah, which is an area of 50 by 50 amma, and you say, well, how much would this base sa'ah go down in value due to this, damage? And Rashi says, you know why we don't do that? Because the mazik would actually end up paying more than he should, because a base sa'ah is a very expensive plot of property. Rashi says it's a relatively small piece of land, and it's not a commonly sold thing, and an ani who can't afford a bigger piece of land will buy this size. So it's an exclusive piece of property. It's a high value piece of property. Lots of demand with little supply. So that would be too valuable. It would be unfair to work with that formula in terms of pegging establishing the damage amount. Rather, we take like this. We take 60 sa'ah. So picture a field, 60 sa'ah in size. How much is that worth? Okay, whatever that is, we divide that into 60. And we say, okay, 1 sa'ah is a 60th of that amount. And now we take that amount and we say, well, with the bananas, how much would it be? Without the 10 bananas, how much would it be? And that difference do you make? So it's sort of like it's a compromise. It's an in-between type of formula. It's not too high, not too low. So that's the first opinion. Sa'ah b'shishim sin. We start with 60, we break it down to 1 sa'ah, and then we take that sa'ah with the bananas, without the bananas that he ate. Rabbi Yani Amar, he says you're going a bit too broad. He says 60 sa'ah. Who buys 60 sa'ah? It's a huge, humongous piece of land. And it's very low demand on that, and therefore we got to go down a bit to a lesser amount. Tarkav v'shishim tarkivim. So a sa'ah is actually 6 kav, right? The word tarkav stands for treva kav, 2 and 1. So it's 3 a kav, which is a half a sa'ah. So basically what he's saying is cut it down to half. Start with 60 tarkav instead of 60 sa'ah, which is basically saying start with 30 sa'ah. How much is a 30 sa'ah piece of land worth? Then divide that into 60, which is basically 60 tarkavs. Okay, so take the bigger amount, divide it into 60, so you have a 60th of the bigger amount that you started with. Take that 60th, and now evaluate with bananas that he ate, without the bananas that he ate. And that difference is what he pays. Chizki Amar klach b'shishim klachim. Skip the sa'ah, the tarkav. He ate a banana? Okay. We say, look, how much would one pay? Let's say he ate 1 patch of tomatoes. How much would one pay for 60 such patches? Okay, I have a garden with 60 such patches, 60 such amounts. And then you say, well, if it's missing a 60th, missing what he ate, how much would it go down in value? So you give that much. So it's not actual retail value, it's sort of wholesale in the bigger picture. So skip the sa'ah with the tarkav. Just take a look at exactly what he ate, what he damaged, and multiply that by 60, and then evaluate how much that larger times 60 amount would go down in value if it's missing a 60th. So it's a sort of compromise between, paying too much and too little. Meisve, here comes a kash. The Brisa says, "Ochel kava kebayim." The animal ate a kav or 2 kav. Ein oimrim teshalm dmeim. So once again, we don't obligate him to pay actual, value. Ela roin oisa kilu hiyaru gaktana, umisharim oisa. So we look at it as though it would be a small patch, and we evaluate it. So Rabbeinu Peretz learns, it means like this. Let's say you had a banana here, a banana there, apple there. We sort of don't evaluate them separately, because that would really cost a lot. We sort of lump it together. Okay, you ate 6 bananas. How much would one little patch of 6 bananas cost you? Or 6 tomatoes? It's less than actually dividing them. Okay, it's sort of like a lump sum. But in any case, we're not speaking about multiplication and 60s and all that. My love, apparently we're making a very literal estimation. The actual damages, in itself, without, broader pictures and wholesale value. So we're like b'shishim. No, of course, the Brisa never meant to preempt the whole shishim formula. It meant exactly as we said before. We take sort of the quantity that he ate, we lump it together as if it would be one patch, and we say, okay, this patch in the context of a broader, whether it's a 60 so, the 30 so, whatever we discussed before, each shita according to his opinion, and we look at the loss of value in that, broader package, and that's what he pays. Turn it up on him. Here comes a brisa which explains it a bit further. Ein shamin kav v'pnei shemashbichai. Soon the Gemara will explain what this means. So we don't evaluate an actual kav because it causes the victim to gain, to profit. V'loi beis kur, nor do we use a beis kur, which is a huge area, because it will cause him loss. Okay, that's the brisa, which sounds like a riddle. Wed May, what did the brisa mean? It means like this. Amar papa, Amar. It means like this. We speak about, multiplying it by 60 and then dividing it, right? Ein shaman kav v'shishim kavim. Let's say you ate, 1 kav of tomatoes. We don't say, well, okay, now let's multiply. How much would 60 kav of tomatoes, a garden with 60 kav of tomatoes, how much would that be? And then we sort of we deduct, how much that 60 kav area would go down in value due to the tomatoes that he ate. We don't do that. Because in this case, the attacker, the mazik, gains. And Rashi explains, because it so happens to be that the amount of 60 kav is again not a common amount. Rashi says it's too much for a poor person to buy, and for an average person it's actually on the small side, and for a wealthy person certainly. So basically, you're not starting off with much value, and this whole thing is negligible. It's not going to cost the mazik much. So you don't do that. V'loi kur b'shishim kurin, nor do you go with the value of a kur, which is a huge amount. A kur, I believe, is 30 sa, right? So you don't say, well, take a kur and multiply it by 60, v'loi kur b'shishim kurin, and then say, well, you ate a kur, not going to pay for the kur, we'll multiply it by 60 and we'll evaluate how much is a 60 kur package going to go down in value because it was missing a kur. You don't do that. Because Rashi says the other way now. A 60 kur field is something very uncommon and very attractive actually. To whom? To a wealthy man. He wants to go big. He wants to buy this huge, humongous piece of land. So he's willing to actually pay extra. So the market, because the clientele that's looking for this type of property is a wealthy clientele, is a wealthy man who can afford it, he's going to pay more. So that's one reason. Another reason, says Rashi, a kur within 60 kur is pretty noticeable. So basically, you're going to end up costing the mazik more than he should. Okay, so that's what the brisa meant. So we can't do kav by 60, we can't do kur by 60. Okay, so we'll see in a minute what we do. Okay, now maskler Rav Huna bar Menayach. So right away you sort of ask the kasha. Hi v'loi beis kur v'loi kur mi'boilei. If it were so that we're trying to rule out taking the kur that you damaged and multiplying it by 60, the brisa wouldn't say v'loi beis kur. Beis kur sounds like an area in which you plant a kur. It would say v'loi kur. You don't take the kur and multiply it by 60. Just like it says, you don't do a kav by 60. You ate a kav, we don't multiply by 60 and then deduct because you're going to end up losing, gain, right? So the brisa should have said the same lashon by kur, v'loi kur. Elamar Rav Huna bar Menayach, the Rav Achaber, the Rav Ika, I'll tell you the pshat in the brisa. The brisa means like this. Ein shaman ka b'fnei atzmai, v'pnei shemashbiach nizak. When you evaluate damages, you don't do the following two things. First of all, let's say you ate a kav. You don't say, wait, a kav of tomatoes, value $100, you pay that. You don't do that. Because in this case, the victim gains. Because you're looking at very literal, retail damages. That's to the nizak's benefit. That's unfair to the mazik. On the other hand, we don't go to the other extreme. V'loy kav beveis kur. Nor do you say, well, let's look at a huge field, base kur, and how much did this base kur lose in value due to the consumption of one kav? What happened was the animal ate a kav, right? So we don't say, okay, kav cost that much. We don't do that. Nor do we say, okay, well, sort of bury the kav in this broader picture. How much would a field that's huge, a base kur, go down in value if it loses one kav? Because then, again, you're going the other way. The victim is losing. It's negligible. It's going to be a few pennies. How much is a kav in a huge field? Nothing, right? The correct formula is the 60 formula, as we mentioned before, which is sort of a moderate formula, a fair compromise, and that gets everybody what they deserve. So bottom line is, we learn from a pasuk that we never pay actual value, 10 bananas, 10, we don't do that. We look at it, within the context of the broader picture, in terms of loss of value. If it were part of a bigger picture, a bigger field, a bigger garden, so this way, it's fair to the mazik and fair to the nizik. Says the Gemara, who gavra? There was a fellow who cut down kashpa. Rashi says kashpa is a decal, palm tree. Mechavre, his friend's palm tree. So how much does he have to pay? Also, kamei galusa. So the victim goes to the Reish Galusa, the head of the community in the Galus there in Bavel, Amar Lei. So Reish Galusa told him, actually noticed that specific palm tree that you're talking about. Utlosa ta'alosa b'kina habu kaimi. So actually, it wasn't just one tree. It was grouped together with two other ones. It was a sort of a trio of trees. So all three were bekina havukami. They were standing. They were sort of growing out of the same area. I know it's worth 100 in total. So you chopped off one of the three. Zil havle tlasa tlasa til. So give him 33 and a third. Okay. So give him a third of 100, 33 and a third. Amar, so the perpetrator, the attacker, exclaims in frustration, "Gabe Reish Galusa, I'm not going to accept this judgment by the Reish Galusa. The doin dinah de barso applies Persian, laws, Persian halachas. Lamali, I have nothing to do with you. I'm not accepting this type of amateur judgment." Why? Because the Din Torah specifically specifies you never pay actual damage, you pay in terms of the broader context. Also coming to Rav Nachman. So in fact, he approached Rav Nachman, who was a Baki in Din. Amali b'shishim. He says, "You're right. You're right. You never look at the actual damage. You sort of evaluate the nezek within a broader context of shishim. 60 times that that amount. How much would it go down in value due to this loss?" Amalei Ravas. Now Rava responded to Rav Nachman. Just because the Chacham tell us based on the pasuk that when your mum and your property, your animal damages, you work with the shishim formula to give you that discount. Who says it applies when a person personally damages? There you have to pay actual damages. You don't get this discount. Abai turned l'Rava b'niskei gufa my daitach. Why would you suggest that personal damages is different? The Sunday, because we have a brisa. Hamav Kir, he destroyed Kamish Chaver's friend's vineyard. Smother, so if it's sort of already budding. So we take a look at the vineyard and we say, look, how much was it worth before he destroyed the budding grapes, and how much did the value drop after he did this? So evidently, we're not working with the shishim formula. We focus on what he did and we evaluate it. Vilu b'shishim l'ktani, there's no mention of shishim. So perhaps this brisa is your source. Well, atu gabe behemte nami l'milaytanya kai gavna. That's not necessarily a raya that we differentiate between damages perpetuated by an animal versus his personal damages. Because look, there's another brisa that uses the same exact wording if an animal causes damage. Listen to this brisa. Kitmonatia, your animal went ahead and chopped off a young sapling. Rabbi Yehuda, well, there's a formula for it. There were these Dayanim in Yerushalayim who would apply penalties and fines for careless people, and their names were Admoin and Chonon ben Avshalom, Rashi brings. So they would establish a very set, clear-cut formula for these things. Netia bashnasa shtei kesef. If it's, a 1-year-old sapling, you pay, within the first year, you pay 2 kesef, bashtei shanim. If it's past a year, you pay 4 kesef. Okay. And the Brisa continues, Achal chaziz, let's say the animal consumed, grain grass. So basically, it's grain which is not yet developed. Basically, you pay based on the future. How much would this grain be worth if it were allowed to grow? No, you don't work like that. You don't work based on future value. You look at the karka, the farm right now. How much was it worth before the animal came in here to attack and to consume, and how much is it worth now? So you look at its present market loss. Ochlos smada. Okay, now let's say the animal ate smada, which Rashi says is anav and daken, the grapes when they start developing. We take it a step further. We visualize how much would these grapes how much would they be worth if they were ripe, ready to be picked? No, we look at its current value. We look at the vineyard, how much was it worth yesterday, how much was it worth today, and that's what you pay. When do we sort of evaluate the small teeny grapes based on the karka, based on the broader vineyard value? When does it relate to the karka? That's only if it's just starting to grow, starting to bud. So the animal ate the lulavigifanim, Rashi says, are the grape clusters which haven't yet really shown themselves at all. And the te'enim, yichur te'enim, is when the figs really started, sort of budding, but they're not yet really discernible. But so in that situation, we sort of view them as part of the land. They're not sort of independent entities. Aval ochlo pagim oy boiser. But if the animal ate the figs when they were called pagim, which are already more developed, or the grapes when they're called boiser, which is sort of like a bean size, they're sort of already discernible. So then you don't get any discounts. Royin oisan ki'ilu anavim oindos libotzer. So we view them as though they're ready to be picked, and basically we look at how much they would have been worth in the future when they're ready to be picked. Okay? Chacham respond by saying no. Royin oisan kama hoisa yafa v'kama yafa. Even when the fruit has already started developing, we don't look at the future, we look at the current value. How much was the place worth before the animal attacked, and how much is it worth now? And that difference you give. Bottom line is, there's no mention of this whole formula of shishim, multiplication, the whole like tani b'shishim. How could that be? We clearly know that an animal only pays based on shishim. So apparently you have to add that to the brisa. Of course, the shishim formula is to be applied at the end of the day. So basically, Chacham are arguing one point. Don't look at the future value, that's number one. Look at the current value. But even within the current value, you can look at the literal value, and you can look at it b'shishim. Right? Like we said before, if you multiply it by 60, and you take the total number and divide it, right? So, of course, you work with shishim. That's the halacha by an animal or tax. So, even though the Brisa didn't mention it, but it's implied, it's understood. So then, let's go back to the first Brisa. Right? Which discussed the person himself attacking and damaging the person's kerem. So it says, you have to pay, there's no mention of shishim, which the Gemara thought would substantiate Abaye's claim that, Rabbi's claim that when a person personally attacks and causes damage, right, not his animal, the person himself, there's no shishim discount. Well, not necessarily, even though the Bryce didn't mention it. It means b'shishim, just like in the second Bryce, which discusses the animals, issues, where it doesn't mention shishim, but of course it's understood that we work with shishim. So bottom line is, according to Maskana says Gemara, whether it's the animal damaging or the person attacking and damaging, you work with the shishim formula. At least according to this shita in the Gemara. Okay, let's just recap. We have an animal walking down the road. So if it slid into the gina and ate the stuff, you only pay the hana. Likewise, if it was cushioned, protected by the person's stuff and causes damage, once again, you pay the hana. We have one pshat that fell in through the Meimi Raglea. The other one says it was shoved by the other animal, which according to the other shita doesn't work because that's a pshia. The halacha of mishal mashenenis, according to one shita, only applies in that aruga that he fell into. Rabbi Yehuda says no, even the entire aruga, the entire garden would have the same halacha as long as he didn't leave. And once he leaves, then you have to be doubly careful he doesn't come back. And if he does, you pay the entire damages. That takes us to the next part of the Gemara. So if he actually walked in and ate, you pay the entire hezek. What if it was the meileda that was mazik? We weren't sure about that. And ultimately, when we speak about paying hezek, it doesn't mean literal, value. Rather, we sort of broaden our picture. We take it within the general context of a shishim, and we look at the diminished value, which is sort of a compromise between paying too much or too little. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.